Bueno, muy buenas noches a todos. Creo que a este punto me están escuchando. Ya tenemos alrededor de unas 19, 20 personas conectadas. Bienvenidos a todos los KeepCoders. Esta es una keynote. En esta ocasión el tema es de vital importancia, de mucho interés para todos los que nos movemos dentro del mundo de la programación. Eh, Seguramente muchos de nosotros hemos tenido el sueño de, soy programador, tengo tantos años de experiencia y me encantaría como tal poder, como decimos, de mensaje coloquial, saltar el charco. Y eso es irnos a los Estados Unidos, cumplir nuestros sueños, trabajar, sea en una startup o en una de esas empresas tecnológicas del Silicon Valley en la cual podamos cumplir nuestros sueños. Y la idea con esta keynote, de hecho, es salir de esas dudas que tenemos actualmente los desarrolladores en función de, ¿será tan fácil ir? Eh, ¿Qué tal el tema de la visa? ¿Puede ser más sencillo de lo esperado? ¿O puede que haya algunas opciones como tal, yo como desarrollador, eh, con la cual sea más fácil poder ir a los Estados Unidos y trabajar allá? Y para todas esas dudas tenemos el inmenso placer de tener a Isabel con nosotros desde más o menos unas 9 horas de diferencia, pero le damos las gracias por estar aquí. Ella va a estar contándonos un poco sobre todo esto alrededor de una hora aproximadamente. Y luego, bienvenidas todas las preguntas. La idea es que cada uno de nosotros salga absolutamente de todas las dudas que tengamos y podamos definitivamente tomar la decisión si definitivamente Estados Unidos es el destino que necesitamos, que queremos y si lo podemos lograr. Así que, Isabel, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate your help. So this is Keep Coding. We have a lot of dreamers here, developers who are people who is looking for opportunities in your country. So the idea is to listen to you, to see different options that we have. Answer finally that question is, can we go to the States? Can we start working there? Can I reach my dreams? So the idea, you are the expert here, so we love to hear from you. Good news, or I don't know, whatever you want to tell us. So thank you so much.
Gracias, gracias. No puede hablar español, ¿eh? Discúlpeme. So I hope it is not a surprise that I'm going to be speaking in English. That is quite a burden. So you want me to tell you how to reach your dreams, and to tell you that. My name is Isabelle Hurtubise, and as he said, I'm an immigration attorney here in Silicon Valley. I have my own firm, and we do both family-based immigration and work-based entrepreneur immigration. I work with a lot of small startups, tech companies, and so on along that line. Just a little bit about myself. Despite how I look, I'm actually an immigrant myself. My parents, my mother's German, father Canadian. We immigrated from Montreal here when I was 15. And I remember my green card interview. My entire family's outside the country. So I just personally feel very passionate about trying to bring people here to the US. And I've seen the enormous benefit and impact to the United States of people who come here, who work hard and make that calculated risk to come to the United States, and what that contributes to our economy. Unfortunately, that is not necessarily the way the U.S. government thinks about it. Immigration for the United States is definitely a challenge, and it needs to be approached creatively. The current atmosphere, the current administration does not make that difficult, does not make that easy, sorry. They make it difficult. So some of these options were different a year ago. My goal here is to inform you about what are the possibilities here. And often what I need to do to give somebody what their personal options are is to really sit down with them and talk to them about their facts, because there's no one path, and each path requires a different strategy. So keep all that in mind, and we will move through this process. So Oh, and please send me questions. I'm going to talk for a while, and then I will do my best to go through your questions. All right, so today I'm going to give you an overview of what the work visas are in the U.S. There's a couple of visas that I often use for small companies and for entrepreneurs that I want you to be aware of. They may be relevant for the companies you're going to work for, or if you're already building something on your own, these are the kinds of things you want to look for. I specifically want to talk about the B visa also. Many of you are in countries where you can come to the U.S. as a tourist on an ESTA. ESTA and a B visa are the same, and I think it's important for you to understand what you can and can't do on that. If we get to it, and I think it is unlikely, I'm going to talk about actually the green card application part. If you want to work in the U.S., you actually need to have a visa that permits you to work. So there's a limited number of options for that. The one that most people know about is the H-1B visa. The term, by the way, H-1B comes from the section of the law that it's found in. So, just so you know, that's what I'm referring to. An H-1B visa, there's only 85,000 of these given each year. Approximately 7,000 are reserved by treaties for citizens from Chile and Singapore. Approximately another 20,000 are reserved for people who have advanced degrees, so who have masters or PhDs. So that really leaves, if you do the math, about 58,000 for folks with bachelor's degrees. So this past year, there were over 200,000 applications for these work visas. And about half of them, they go through a lottery process. About half of them didn't even make the lottery to be opened and considered. All right, I'll go into this. So what is an H-1B visa? An H-1B visa is what most software developers who work in the U.S. use to work here. So it is a non-immigrant visa for a highly skilled foreign national to work in the U.S. To get an H-1B visa, you must be sponsored by a U.S. company. And there has to be an employer-employee relationship there. So having your own company sponsor you only works if you don't own your own company. Entrepreneurs love that. So, okay, what do we got? One moment here. You can be in the U.S. on an H-1B for a maximum of 6 years. Then you have to go home for at least a year. There's some ways to change that. These are the requirements. The requirements are really about the job. So the job has to be in what's considered a specialty occupation. So this is an occupation as defined by the government in the U.S. That requires a bachelor's degree. A bachelor's degree means a 4-year degree. Many degrees in Europe are a licencia, they're a 3-year degree. Those aren't considered equal to a U.S. degree. So sometimes folks who've done a year of a master's program or have significant work that we can translate into another year of school, that's how they count for a bachelor's degree. For these jobs, the employer is required to pay prevailing wage. Prevailing wage is actually dictated by the Department of Labor in the U.S., and it's based on surveys of what Americans usually get paid in these jobs. and then you have to qualify for the job, so whatever the requirements are. Okay, so I want to look at I want to show you what an H-1B looks like, specifically for an applications software developer. I'm just sort of guessing that might be the field that most of you are interested in. The first thing we do when we're looking at the possibility of an H-1B visa is we actually look up what's called the SOC code, which is the Department of Labor code here in the US. And the SOC code for software developers that specifically work on applications is this number up here. And there's actually a whole page detailing the kind of work that those people do. And your job needs to be what this says it is. As I mentioned, you have to have a 4-year bachelor's degree in a relevant field. 3 years of work experience is considered equal to 1 year of school. So if you've worked and you have your 3-year degree, that could be considered a 4-year degree. So that prevailing wage that I was just talking about, that's how much the companies have to pay you, the US companies. The reason there's this rule is because Congress doesn't want Facebook to be getting cheap software developer labor from overseas. They want them to be hiring Americans, so they have this rule. That wage is set at different levels. So there's level 1, which is kind of the entry level. There's level 2, there's level 3, there's level 4. And there's a higher amount of experience required, as well as higher salary. So for an entry level, this is what immigration requires for an H-1B. They require that you have 2 years of work experience beyond that bachelor's degree. And they require the employer to pay you at least $89,000 San Jose, and in San Francisco it's a bit lower. It's about $83,000 US. These seem high, but you have to remember that we don't have the social services that you have in Europe. The reality is, however, that the current administration doesn't like these level 1 jobs. They are denying them because they're saying if you're an entry-level software developer, that's not a specialty occupation. So most of my clients are applying for H-1Bs now under the next level. And you can see those wages are significantly higher. So if you're looking to come into the US on this H-1B visa, first you need to get a job offer from a US company. It doesn't need to be a big company, but it could have just started. I've done a lot of ones for really small, brand new startups. But they have to be willing to pay you whatever is going to meet this prevailing wage. And you have to be able to have the education and experience and do all that math so that you're meeting these minimum requirements. Jorge, can I just ask, is everything, can you understand everything? Am I moving too quickly?
Yes, I don't know if someone have a question. Actually, I have only one. Maybe you can answer it immediately.
Yeah,
This is from
you're
Jose.
special. You're special. I'll answer your questions.
Cool. Well, I'm gonna read you one. This is from Jose. He's Mexican, and he's asking about how about TN visa for Mexicans and Canadians? It's more difficult for us or more difficult?
No, it's good for you, and I'm going to get to those in a moment. This stuff applies for those other kinds of work visas. So it might actually be my next slide. Is there another question? I'm going to get to the TN in a moment.
No, not yet. Okay. You can continue, and I'll let you know.
All right. So treaty work visas for professionals. So the U.S. has treaties with particular countries, and they have special work visas, all of which are very similar to the H-1B, but don't require that you go through this crazy lottery process. They do have caps, but those caps are never reached. So effectively, these visas, if you qualify, are available to you at any point in time. Employers really like these visas because they don't have to go through the lottery process. When I have companies come to me and say, I have a Korean architect and I have an Australian architect, which one should I hire? And I say, well, do you want them to work for you within the next 2 years? Because then you should hire the Australian or the Mexican in this case. So these are the ones. Singapore and Chile, I mentioned that they have this special little set aside for those H-1B visas. The TN visas, those are the NAFTA visas, and that's for Canadians and Mexicans. And then the E3 visa, which is Australia. They have these different names, even though they're very similar because they're from different parts of the law. So I'm going to start with the H-1B one. Do we have any Chileans out there?
Well, I don't know if he's connected, but I suppose to someone from Chile.
Okay. All right. So Chileans and Singaporeans, if they meet these H-1B requirements that we just went through, they can actually just go to a consulate and prove that they have all this and get the visa right then and there. And they can come in for up to 18 months and renew it. So that is a lot easier than going through the lottery process. TN visas are even easier because you don't need to show that experience requirement, and you don't need to show prevailing wage. So all you need is a bachelor's degree. It needs to be in a field that counts, software development counts, and you have to have a job. The Canadians can just do this at the border. It's actually pretty easy for them. Mexicans need to apply for it through an actual paper application, and then they enter in on it. But it is a great visa for Mexicans and Canadians. You still need a job offer from a U.S. company. So the thing to think about is that NAFTA is currently being renegotiated, and we're not quite sure what's going to happen with these visas. There are tens of thousands of people here working on these visas, and U.S. companies really need these people, so it's hopeful that that's going to be protected, continue to exist after, but it's something to keep in mind. So I have a lot of folks who are here on TNs, and their company just keeps applying for H-1Bs, and then eventually they get an H-1B, but they've been here on TNs. I think one of my clients has been here for 18 years as a TN. So, you can be here for a long time on that. The E3 visa is similar to the H-1B, and that, like that H-1B one, can be done at the border. So those are quite nice. But for that, you do need to show that prevailing wage.
Cool.
So
What about the English level? Someone is asking about the English level that is needed for the application.
Yeah, so to understand this presentation, you need some basic English. That's my joke. There's no TOEFL requirement as of now. The TOEFL is the test to see if your English is adequate to enter a U.S. university and so on. So maybe you're familiar with that. There's some discussion in the current administration of requiring that test, but it doesn't exist. That requirement doesn't exist as of now. Generally, once the application is approved, I like to have my clients go to a consulate and get their visa at a consulate, because if they do have challenges with English, the officer can speak with them in their own language. Again, there's no requirement that you be fluent in English. There's no test, at the interview. but they're going to be concerned if you're coming over. You know, the officer is going to be sort of asking some questions. But basic English is usually enough. So.
Cool, 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 cool. Other question here. If I
Mhm.
don't have a degree, but maybe I have experience, can I apply with this to anyone, well, any of these visa without a degree?
So all these ones we've talked about so far, you need to have the equivalent of a U.S. bachelor's degree, a 4-year U.S. bachelor's degree. So to do this, we just do the math. Um, we add up however many semesters of university you have. So, you know, if you have none, then, you know, that's 0. Um, for each year of professional work experience, for each 3 years, we can make that 1 year of school. So, for example, if you have no university but 12 years of work experience, then we can make that equivalent to a U.S. bachelor's degree. If you have a 3-year licencia plus 3 years of experience, then we can make that equal to a 4-year U.S. bachelor's degree. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Well, let's wait if this is the one who asked have another question, if it's clear for him. But it's okay, it's okay. I think that we can continue with the presentation and then I ask you a few more questions.
Okay, thank you. So quasi work visas. So these are ways that people who don't, you know, can't make the H-1B to lottery, don't fit into one of um, these other categories, can come here and work. And these are pretty common, especially for entrepreneurs. So you may be familiar with these. The F1 visa is the student visa in the US. So if you're enrolled in a degree program in the US, you get 1 year of full-time work. It's called optional practical training. Um, every university has their own rules about it. Some let you start working right away as just part of your program. Some will even let you do full-time and you take classes and weekends. You know, you kind of have to shop around for the university. Um, if the degree that you're studying, once it's completed and you've done that year, if you're in what's called a STEM field, so that's science, technology, engineering, and math, so software development would fall in that field, you can get another 17 months of work authorization as a student in a degree program. So that is an option a lot of people take. Even if you have a licencia or you have, you know, several years of university study, you matriculate or you come to a U.S. school, maybe do a 1-year master's program, whatever, and you can potentially get over 2 years of work authorization. During that time, your employer could be applying for an H-1B, or if you're building your own business, then your own business, there may be ways to have that business sponsor you to get a visa or even just go direct to a green card. So this is a really great option, you know, because we all have money to pay for tuition, right? If you're able to cover that part, this is a great option to give you flexibility, get your foot in the US and start strategizing for the next stage of the immigration process. So actually I have a lot of clients that end up doing this. The other, what I call quasi work visa, is the J1 internship program, or there's also a trainee program. J1 is this sort of weird kind of like cultural exchange visa, and within it are a lot of different programs, like the au pair program is under this visa. And there are 2 programs under the J1 that are relevant for folks like your KeepCoding graduates. the internship and the trainee program. All J1 visas have to be sponsored by an approved J1 visa program. And you can actually just look these up online. The government publishes lists. And I have folks who literally shop around. They just start calling them and saying, this is my situation, what do you think? You do need to be, for an internship program, you need to be enrolled in or a recent graduate of a foreign degree program. For the trainee version, you need to have graduated, but it doesn't, you need to have graduated and have another 5 years of experience. So the idea behind these is that the U.S. company that's hosting you is training you or providing you with a cultural experience. So we usually have to come up with some kind of a training plan that we submit to the organization. There's a lot of flexibility there, and we've come up with some creative ways that you can come here and work and be trained or have an internship here with a software startup or a larger company. So big companies like Google and Facebook have really big J1 programs, for example, and startups use this visa as well. So I don't see the questions, but are there any questions about this?
Yes, I have a few questions for you. One of those is, all the formalities for asking the visa are managed by the company that contracted you?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, all the formalities for asking the visa are managed by the company that contracted you?
So for all those work visas, the TN, the H-1Bs, and so on, there needs to be a company offer, and the company is the kind of the sponsor, but the reality in my experience is the employee ends up doing most of the work to actually put this stuff together. So you have an attorney for all these, so we help. I give a lot of homework. I'm like, all right, I need your birth certificate translated. I need your resume, and you have to change this on your resume. I need an organizational chart of the company to see where you're going to be, that kind of thing. So it's a little bit of work on everybody's part.
Okay.
For the F1 and the J1, that really is more the work of those organizations. So for the F1, it's the school that deals with that application process, and they pretty much do everything. And if they've said it's okay, generally the government rubber stamps it. On the J1s, if it's a more creative placement, so it's not kind of an established trainee or internship program at a large accounting firm or a large tech firm, then there is more involvement on my part in coming up with something that'll meet the legal requirements and that makes sense for the employer and makes sense for the employee. So however creative it has to be, then there's a little bit more homework. Does that answer that question?
Well, it was the one who asked is Santiago. I don't know if Santiago is completely clear or not. We can wait for his answer. So I can continue with another question for a while.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Santiago.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you one that is related to this one. For example, how long is the minimum term of the academic degree on the OPT visa, this one optional practical training visa?
So it just needs to be a degree program. So master's degrees in the U.S. can be as short as 1 year. So it's not a bad deal.
Yeah.
You got your 1 year, you pay for it. Those schools know you're paying for it, and they're happy to have you. and then they will help you with the OPT. So when I talk about shopping around for the school and shopping around for that J1 organization, I'm being very blunt about it, and I recommend that my clients be very blunt about it as well. You know, happy for the
Yeah,
education, but I really need to be able to work as well. And, that everybody knows what's going on.
I see, I see. Two more questions about the J1.
Hmm.
First, says, are the trainee programs paid if you have a degree outside the US and 5 years of experience in case of trying to apply for J1 visa, or are not paid but is a way to get the visa?
So I think the question is, does your position as a J1 need to be a paid position?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that? Okay. Um, to tell you the truth, I'm not actually certain about that, because I've never had a situation where the employer wasn't going to pay the J1. I would certainly, that employer, they're required to pay some minimal amount for really basic health insurance. I would guess that there's some requirement for a living wage, at least for that person. The U.S. immigration system is always very sensitive to people coming here and becoming public charges. So they're always like, do you have enough money to live here? We don't want you living on the streets and on welfare. That costs us money. So there's probably some basic amount, but I do know for J1 there's no minimum prevailing wage. So we're not talking about that 80,000, that 110,000 that we're talking about for an H1B. We're talking about a lot less.
Two more. I'm going to is something like similar. If you have, I don't know, suggestions about different networks, not LinkedIn, where we can find companies that contract aliens.
So you mean for a J1?
Yes, or maybe another options for looking for a job.
Yeah, so the looking for a job part is going to be the same way anybody looks for a job. I think it was Jose who was Mexican. Uh, definitely make it clear to employers that while you're not a U.S. citizen or green card holder, you are Mexican, and that if they know well enough, they'll know that means you're eligible for this other visa. So they like that. That's a pro. So looking for a job is just, the way that anyone would look for a job through your own personal network. In terms of J1s, they definitely want your money. They definitely want those host employer money. That's, some of them help you find the positions. Sometimes with companies who've never had a J1, the person will get a job or will have a connection, often through people of their own nationality or through their consulate. They'll find another, a Spanish national company, and KeepCoding, let's say they're hiring in the U.S. And sometimes it's the prospective employee's job to educate the employer on, look, there are these other options. Let my lawyer just explain them if you haven't done them before. It's not as hard as you might think it is. So for J1s, shop around, call the organizations. I think there's, at last count, 89 of them that do this in the U.S. Yeah, and then otherwise it's the same way as anyone would find a job. Use the KeepCoding alumni network.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
One more question before you continue. All this process of getting a visa to go to work in the US is a little bit more complicated with the Trump administration?
Yeah, yes. In a number of different ways, unfortunately. One of them is what I was talking about with the H-1B visas, that things that they found to be a specialty occupation, or these level 1 wages and experience levels, things that they've traditionally always found to be acceptable, they're not. They're requiring more. They're requiring higher salaries. They're requiring more experience. The way in which they're doing that is using there's significant litigation going on right now by advocates of immigration, as well as all these companies that depend on you guys to make their businesses run. And so it'll be interesting to see the end of this litigation, whether it's found that all these implicitly higher standards are going to be found to be, just not allowed under the law. So that's one way. The second way that they're making it difficult is there's a recent executive order called Buy American, Hire American. We call it Baja. It is not as fun as Baja, Mexico, if any of you have been there. The idea is to tell all of the officers at the consulates to be tougher with people who are coming for visas, and to say, why can't an American do this job? The answer to that is we're just preparing our clients better, but it does create a slightly more hostile environment. So there's not anything concrete, but there's a lot of little ways. So we just need to be better prepared. Better prepare our clients for that potential hostility, I guess it is.
Yeah. Maybe if you want to continue, and then I ask you a few more questions.
Yeah. Okay. So the U.S. does not have a traditional entrepreneur visa. A traditional entrepreneur visa is, I have a fantastic idea, and a lot of people who know a lot about this field want to give me a ton of money. That seems to me like something you really want for your country. However, the U.S. does not have that kind of visa. Lots of other countries do. Chile does, for example. So they invite people and say, if you have a good idea and you can convince angel investors to give you money for this idea, then cool. There's nothing like that in the U.S., so we use these other visas to kind of make it work. So these are visas where you're forming your own company, or in terms of the O1A visa, you can come and work for someone or your own company. So I'll just kind of go through them, but I want to make clear that these aren't true entrepreneur visas. They're creative ways to apply existing visas to the realities of how the economy works today. So O1A visas, I'm guessing some of you have heard of this visa. It's for extraordinary ability or achievement in sciences, business, education, athletics, so on. Justin Bieber is here on an O1A visa, so that's the level we're talking about. A lot of people have really impressive resumes and have done a lot of things. This might be a visa that makes sense for them. So they still need some kind of a job offer in their field. It could be a job offer from their own company. They could form their own, consulting company in software development or blockchain technology, whatever their particular specialty is within their field. However, it's a difficult visa to get, and I can talk about why that is. The E1, E2 visa is another one of these visas that's been created by treaties that we have with other countries. They're available to people from those countries. Spain is one of them. A lot of Latin American countries fall into this. And what this will allow you to do is come to the U.S. if you invest a chunk of your own personal funds into a small business, or if you have a business in the U.S. that is doing a lot of trade with that country that you're coming from. And trade includes services. So, if you're doing a lot of contract work, and you have a U.S. company through which you're selling it, the E1 is a possibility. The L visa used to be really fabulous, and under the current administration, it's pretty dead in terms of startups. But I will mention it. The L visa is a transfer visa, so big accounting firms, big tech firms, Google, Facebook, so on, their executives that are outside the country can transfer to the U.S. For this, for a job, the same kind of job here. We've used this in the past to, if you have an existing business in Spain that's been around for a year, you can transfer yourself to a brand new office you just formed in the U.S. So it's good for people who have, in the past at least, they're just getting a lot tougher on it. So the O1A visa for extraordinary ability. I tell my clients that it's not really about whether they are extraordinary. You are all extraordinary people. I'm certain of it. It's about whether you meet these weird, sort of very specific requirements that the laws and that these officers want to see, and if you have the documentation to prove it. So how many folks out there have heard of the O1A visa? Is there anyone out there? Show of hands.
Let's see, someone answered.
Wow, nobody, really? I have a lot of people who contact me and they're like, yeah, I'm extraordinary, I want this visa. So interesting. Okay. Something to consider though, if you depending on what you've accomplished in the specifics of the field that you're in. So I'll go through this a bit more quickly, and then for folks who want to know more about it as applied to their particular experience, their resume essentially, just let me know and we can schedule a consultation. So what we do is we define a specific field. So if your field is developing apps specifically for the iPhone, and there's some part of that that you're just really good at, that might be your field. And then what we're looking at is there's 8 criteria, and we're looking at establishing at least 3 of them, although the applications we submit, we try for 5. The kind of stuff they're looking for is whether you won national awards. So, you wrote this app for the iPhone and it won an award in a contest that was across Spain or, across Chile. The membership in selective organizations, that actually could be a lot of things people don't think of. So I know like Tetuan Valley, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's a big deal to be invited to be one of the folks on there, even though there's not a lot of work that they have to do. So, there's stuff out there that you may not think of that can fall in that category. Published articles, they really like this one. Anything about you, blog posts or about your work. So I tell people, if you're thinking about coming to the U.S. in the future, start trying to build this kind of profile. Like, do the little bit of extra work to, do a little article there, try to get your picture in something. If you attend a conference, look for a media opportunity. Original contributions of major significance. This one is one where actually I'm very creative, so you'd be surprised at what kinds of original contributions of major significance you may have done. For this, we usually submit a lot of letters from experts in the field. So about, Juan did this he did this app and it was really amazing, and it was the basis for this new XYZ. So we get a couple people who are big deals in the field, and they write a letter saying that. All right, I will try to. All right, scholarly articles generally doesn't apply to your field. High salary. If you've been a judge or on a panel at a major competition, so that can be hackathons, for example. Employed at a distinguished company, so any major company that, you know, we just show that you worked there and you did good work. So that's the O. The E treaty investor visa. So I'm going to talk both about the E1 and the E2. The E1 actually can sometimes be better applied for something like software development, because as I said, you could be effectively trading service with the US. So you have a company in the US, a consulting company, you're working from your home in Spain, and you know, you're selling your stuff there. That company could potentially sponsor you for a visa to go over to the US. So the US company has to be at least 50% owned by somebody of that same nationality as you. It doesn't have to be you. If you're doing it as an investment, the funds have to come from you or whoever is the owner, you know, the Spanish owner, let's say. If it's an E1, so you're trading services, then there's no investment requirement. One thing people do is they purchase an existing business. It's pretty easy, gets you over here. This is a bit more detail. If this is something you're interested in, you have family or you have friends and you're considering kind of going in on doing something here, then that's something that you should talk to me further about. So here are the countries that have treaties. You can see Spain is up there. And then down here in Latin America, we have Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Paraguay, and Suriname. I think Suriname is the only one we haven't done one from. So if there's anybody out there from there, I'd love to do an e-visa from there. So, and then here are the other ones. So you may notice that Brazil is not on here. That is, so a lot of Brazilians, you know, they're looking for somebody who, or the Brazilians we work with generally have a second citizenship, because there was a, you know, significant migration there. We have Germans that live in Brazil, we have Spaniards that live in Brazil, and so on. Okay.
I have two questions before you continue.
Yeah. Yes.
One is, in your opinion, you know, are the companies open to hire a person outside the US, considering that they have to do all the visa process? You know, because it's easy to hire someone from inside the US. So the question is, how possible, in your experience, is to get a job, a real job, not a trainee with a J1 visa?
It really depends on the quality of the applicant. I will say that employers tell me it is really hard for them to find good people here. They don't do this stuff because they think it's fun. I'm just not that delightful. And I do ask them to do quite a bit. So it has to make business sense for them to do this. In addition, that whole getting in the door thing with the F1 and the J1, I get a lot of US employers that contact me that say, hey, I've had this guy on OPT or as a J1, and they are awesome. Like, I cannot imagine my business without them. So then they're ready to do all this work to get that person here. So it's one reason why I mentioned that. I think it's a good strategy for folks who have that. Plus, if you're here on an F1 or a J1, it's a really good time to date and look for a U.S. citizen spouse, because that is always going to be the easiest way. So has to be a real relationship, of course, but you know, it's a lot easier to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that in the U.S. The easier visas, the E3 from Australia, the H1B1 from Chile and Singapore, the TN from Mexico and Canada, those are so much easier for the employers, even if they're not aware of that. Once I explain it to them, they're like, oh yeah, you know, if I can get this great person, it's cheaper for them to spend the $5,000 to get that person here than to spend another $5,000 worth of HR time and postings and so on to keep looking for an applicant. So I guess the answer is it depends on you. How good are you? How good is your resume? How well can you pitch yourself? You know, because there is the opportunity here. As I think it's evidenced also by the fact that companies are now getting involved in litigation and directly in lobbying to open up these visas. You know, Facebook, Google, Tesla, they're not getting involved in these. Microsoft is just started a big lawsuit. They're not doing this stuff because they think, oh, gee, it's just fundamentally unfair that these people can't come here and work. It's a very real business need for them to have, in their cases, specifically software developers. So I don't think the door is shut. And if you know, if this sounds a bit overwhelming, it's because I approach it. Maybe I don't approach it so much from a business perspective. I approach it more from a technical perspective. Like, okay, these are the requirements I need for my case. But the business person who's doing the hiring is looking at it from a different perspective.
I have one more question. When you work in the US as a developer for many years, um, can I get a green card maybe one day in the future, or what should I do?
Yep. Okay, so I'm going to skip over the L visa. If someone out there has their own business and it's been around for over a year, it's worth at least talking to me about whether that's a possibility. So I'll just put that out there. And I'll go back to this B1 visa, but I'll jump into the green card for now. Okay, so you can immigrate you have to be sponsored by someone typically to get a green card. The most common way is family. The most common way out of that is a spouse. So that's obvious. However, if you want to come based on your resume, there are a couple different, there's basically 4 paths if you want. They are named EB1, EB2, there's 2 versions of that, and EB3. The EB means employment based, so 1, 2, 3. 1 is like for the O visa that I talked about. It's for people who are so extraordinary that they have value to the U.S. regardless of whether or not an employer has a job offer for them. So an EB1A, actually, you don't need a job to do that one. If you are truly extraordinary in your specific field, then there may be a basis for you to directly apply for a green card on your own. And that may not be a possibility for you for the KeepCoding students out there in your stage of your career, but it's something to know about for the future. EB2 and EB3, which for whatever reason I have on the next page, there we go. I'm going to skip over the EB2 and IW for a moment. So EB2 and EB3 are the most common ones. That is an employer sponsors you. So the employer files for the green card. It could be any employer. So it could even be, you don't even have to be in the U.S. working. Somebody could apply directly for a green card for you right now. there has to be a real job, and that the U.S. company needs to have done a job search to make sure there's not an American or a green card holder who can do that particular job. That all takes a while. It can be expensive. It's a weird thing for employers because they have to look like they're looking for an employee, but they don't actually want to find one. What they really want to do is get you a green card. So it's a little bit of a dance. The EB2 are for folks that have master's degree or higher, and EB3 are for people who have a bachelor level degree. The EB2 NIW it's called the National Interest Waiver, and this is another one where you can apply on your own. You don't need to have an employer sponsor you. It's kind of like EB1 light. You know, it's the same sort of idea that you are so valuable to the U.S. In and of yourself that there doesn't need to be a U.S. company that wants to employ you. Your skills are so valuable. So those are the green card options on that route. Some of you may have heard of what's called an EB5. That's the one where you invest $500,000 to $1 million into like very specific types of projects in the U.S. and you can apply for a green card that way. So, you know, if anybody out there has got a $500,000 or so in their back pocket, you can buy a green card. Does that answer the question on the green card? Any questions on that?
Well, not yet, but
okay.
I don't know if we have all that money in our pocket.
Yeah, I mean, neither do I. So
yeah.
That's not how I got my green card. So
yeah.
But some people have heard of that, and so they want to know about it. So I want to talk about what you can do on a B1 visa. Most of you are in countries where you can come in on an ESTA, and that's a treaty-based arrangement by which you don't have to get a visa. For countries that don't have this ESTA treaty arrangement, those people have to get what's called a B visa, and it's like a tourist visa. So a B and an ESTA are pretty much the exact same thing. They have the same rights and things you can do and can't do. The B visa, you can come in for 6 months at a time. So sometimes I have folks, even if they have ESTA as a possibility, they come in on a B because they want more time before they have to go home. And an ESTA, you can only come in up to 90 days. The B and the ESTA allow you to come in for business reasons. And it's not work. You can't come and work, but you can come here and do things that are related to employment. So you can come and go to these conferences. You can come and chat with people that you're not applying for jobs at, but talking to them about possibilities in the industry. It's all phrasing. Conferences, if you're on the board of directors or if you're starting a small company, you can come here to get office space, talk to potential employees, do all the banking stuff. That's what you'd be using this visa for, and it's absolutely permissible. This is a very common visa for accelerator programs, so for startups here or anywhere else in the world when they come here. So for anyone who's heard of Techstars, they're a really great accelerator program. So the companies that come here to do the Techstars accelerator always come on a B visa. They're going to need to be here more than 90 days. I bring this up because it's important to know that even if you come here and you're working for a foreign company, that's still not permitted. So you can't come here and do contract work for a UK company or a Spanish company and just be sitting on your couch here in the US. That's considered work. Because that Spanish company, if they can hire you while you're in the US, they could hire an American while you're in the US. In addition, if you come here and work for a US company but you don't get paid, that could still be considered work. because yeah, it's great they have you, but that could be a job that, day to day, sitting there and coding the way that an employee normally would, that could be considered work. So, just be careful about that, because that sometimes comes back to people later when, they're the officer's like, oh, you were here for 2 years. What were you doing as a tourist here, going back and forth home? Oh, I was working for a foreign company. It's fine. They're like, whoa. So, yeah, so you just kind of have to keep all that in mind as you're moving.
Talking about sorry,
No,
Isabel.
no, go ahead.
Talking about this visa, the B1, is allowed for the training program, or it doesn't fit
Yeah.
on it?
Nope. It's allowed for a training program. Yeah. So, for example, if you wanted to do a boot camp program for KeepCoding, and you wanted to do it here face-to-face based in the US, I don't actually know if they have one yet, but let's imagine they did. You could come for like a 4-month program and attend that. That would be permitted under this program. You can come under
Okay.
ESTA also to do that, but you might prefer to just get a B visa. You can stay longer, extended if
Mhm.
necessary.
I have another questions
Sure.
here. Yeah. In my case, I am originally from Colombia with a Spanish nationality. In case of a company applying for a visa for me, would I have to do as a Colombian or Spanish? I
You can
ask
do it.
this because last year I read the requirements to apply for the green card lottery, and since I am original Colombian, I was not allowed to do it.
Oh, do you have Colombian citizenship?
She is from Colombia, but she has the Spanish nationality too. So she applied, but because she's originally from Colombian, the requirement says that she's not allowed to do it. Is that true?
Oh,
Is not true? Can she do it?
so
Cannot?
yeah, so she applied for the diversity lottery, and those rules, they change a little bit every year, and depending on what country you're from, the rules will be a little bit different. So I can't speak specifically to her situation as to the diversity lottery. Um, some of them have residency requirements. So it's not just that you have a Colombian passport, but you need to actually be living there. Or it's not just that you have a Spanish passport, you have to be living there. However, for all these visas that we talked about, if you've got, 3 citizenships, you get to pick which one works best. So if you're Spanish and Chilean, uh, get that passport dusted off and use it for an H-1B1. That would be fine. Or if you're Brazilian, but you also have a Spanish citizenship, and find that Spanish passport and use it to apply for an E1 visa. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, what's the last question? Another question. What about when you dream to go there, you dream to go for the big companies, to Facebook, to Google, or maybe the companies who is hiring now people from outside the US are the smallest ones. Uh, which are the requirements that I need to take into account in order to find the correct company for apply?
So the big ones have a system in place. They have the machinery in place to sponsor the J1s, to do H1Bs, to do TNs. They kind of pump those out. So in terms of just being able to be here and work, those are definitely the easiest. For smaller companies, the nice thing about smaller companies is if they want to hire you, they want to hire you. They're not just hiring a software developer, like some random software developer. So they're usually willing to go a little bit more out on a limb and be a little bit more creative about the evidence that they'll give me so I can make something work. So yeah, kind of depends on what you want. In terms of who's hiring, I can't say. I don't really have my finger on the pulse of what the hiring market is in general. I tend to work with small companies and startups. I just like them more. It's a little bit more interesting. I don't want to be part of the Facebook machinery that just kind of pumps out these visas. Um, and I can tell you, these small companies have limited time and they've limited cash, and they still want to hire. They still want to go through this. And you know, like I said, I'm just not that delightful, so there must be a business reason for it.
Okay, I see. I have another question here. Um, well, let's imagine if I go for vacations to the US, I'm in the US as a visitor, and I find a very good job opportunity for me. Can I change my status, my visa status while I'm in the US as a visitor?
If you're on a B1, yes. If you're on ESTA, no.
Okay.
That's another reason people sometimes decide to come on a B1, because if they accidentally run into a great job while they're here, then they can just change their status.
Okay, cool. I have Carlos is asking three questions. So let's see what he's looking.
Wow. All right, Carlos, I'm
Great.
ready. Okay. I get the bar for this one.
Somebody told him that he cannot apply for a job when staying in the US with a B1 visa. Does it include having a job interviews, or is okay as long as you don't start working for the employer until you get the proper visa?
So there's two parts of that. One is that your purpose in entering, so upon entry, cannot be to look for a job. That can't be your reason. You could be coming to have exploratory talks with people about your field in general. You know, this is the heart of software development. You want to come and chat with different people. But I wouldn't tell the border guard, hey, here's my list of interviews that I have, you know, that I'm all ready for. That if you do get a job, well, I'll put it the other way. The other factor to consider is the kind of questions that could be asked in the future about you. So they're going to look back and say, hey, you entered on this B visa. What did you do in the first month or two? And I am conservative, so I say the first 90 days. What did you do in the first 90 days? Was anything in that 90 days, did anything look like you really were trying to stay? Because if you're here for a couple months and things change, then that can happen. That's okay. You've been here a few months. You came just to visit and learn about your field and talk with other software developers and go to meetups and whatnot. But then you just loved it and you realized, wow, this is the heart and I want to stay. I mean, that's one thing. But if you show up and you have a job offer 3 weeks later, and that company is applying for a visa for you 4 weeks later, it really starts to look like when you came into the country, you were trying to stay. To use an analogy to the marrying a U.S. citizen, if someone comes in on a B, they can come in to visit a girlfriend, boyfriend, but they probably should think about whether or not they want to stay for, at least 90 days before they decide to marry the spouse, because it looks pretty suspicious if they get married like 3 days later. So, you know, you want to think about that timing issue and how it might look in the future. Does that answer? I think that answers that question. Hello?
Yeah. So,
Jorge, we can hear you.
yeah, I see. Sorry, I was talking. I didn't see that I have my microphone in mute. So, second question, Isabel. How long can it take to get this visa from the very first application to the moment when you finally get the permission to enter to the United States? and how much in general I need to invest in all this visa process. I'm talking about money.
Yeah, so the timing depends on the visa entirely. Um, most of these visas, from the time you actually submit it to the government, it's really just a matter of a few weeks until you find out. Most of these visas have what's called premium processing available. So you ask them, I want to hear in a couple weeks, and they'll let you know. It's the preparation of the application that tends to take the longest time. So for that O visa, what I was talking about, the extraordinary ability, trying to get the various people to agree to write letters, getting draft letters, looking at them, that kind of thing can just take a while to put together. So we're talking however long you think it would take you to put this stuff together, just double that amount of time, because people always think they can do it faster. The exception is the H-1B visa, because there's a limited amount and they run out. They become available on April 1st of every year, and they're gone within days. So you can only submit your application in the first 5 days of April. You don't know if you're going to make that lottery. If you do, it'll probably take them a couple months to let you know, just because they have 200,000 plus applications for like that many visas. If it is approved, you can only start, the earliest you can start is October 1st of that year. So if you're planning an H-1B route, and by the way, now is the time to try to get the job offers for companies to sponsor you for this visa, because it takes a couple months there to even get it together. So for that, you're really limited in terms of the timing. For the other ones, like I said, when you submit it, it's a little bit different for every visa, but conservatively, you probably have a response within 2 months or less. We're always trying for less.
Is there
the one?
Yes, I'm sorry.
The ones that you can do at the border, so TNs for Canadians, E3s for Australians, and then those H-1B ones for Chileans and Singaporeans. Those are much faster. Those can take 2 weeks, which is why they're awesome. In terms of cost, it depends on the border ones. Again, are just really cheap. I mean, you're just paying $100 or so for the interview, a couple $100 probably for the interview. For the ones that you have to file within the U.S. first, they're at least $2,000 in terms of filing fees to the government. And then attorney fees really depend on which type of visa it is. So for the filing fees with the government, it depends on whether you're going through a consulate or whether you're filing here in the U.S.
Oh, okay, cool. Is there any kind of age restriction for qualifying for any one of these visas? For example,
No.
if I'm 36 years old?
If you're 36 years old, good for you. I hope you're exercising. You're approaching middle age. Yeah, no, there's no age restriction one way or another. I think for the O visa, the extraordinary ability one, they're really looking for someone who's accomplished things over time. So sometimes, the younger folks just don't have enough in terms of a track record. The ones where you need to have a college degree and so on, if you got your master's by age 12, then heck, you would still qualify.
Cool. Another question. If I get a job with a visa, what happens if I lost the job, or the visa is extremely related to the company, or if I still have the visa, can I apply for another job?
So all these visas, I'm just thinking, except for, no, I think every single one is tied to the employer. So not a B visa, but all the ones that allow you to work. So they'll actually have the employer name on the visa itself. You can, for an H-1B, for example, you can transfer that H-1B. So if you have it and you get another job, they just file a new H-1B for you and you start working there under it. And a lot of people do that, especially that's common in software development. I have, TN visas, the ones from Canada and Mexico, because there's no time limit. I got one guy, I think I'm on his 4th transfer. He just kind of keeps hopping job to job. For any of these visas, if you lose the job, you have a period of time, like a grace period, where you can stay, pack up your stuff, and go, or try to find a new job, and you can still do it within that time. They recently extended the grace period for an H-1B. It used to be 0, basically. Now it's 60 days. So, for folks where they know their company's going under, their companies are usually really supportive, try to keep them on payroll as long as possible, and then they have 60 days to find a new gig that could apply for and qualify for an H-1B.
Okay, I have 2 last questions. For example, I am Brazilian with Uruguayan citizenship, and because I am living in Chile, currently I live in Chile, I'm also taking out the Chilean citizenship. In my Brazilian passport, I have a B1, B2 visa, but no visa in the Uruguayan passport. What do you recommend to do? Try with my Brazilian B1, B2 visa, or try with the Uruguayan passport, or definitely wait for my Chilean passport?
Okay, so if I have this correct, you've got 2 passports and you're working on a 3rd. Is that right?
Well, I think yes. Brazilian, Uruguayan 2 passports, and then he's waiting for the 3rd one, that is to say, one from Chile.
Okay, so you get to shop around. So you can use whichever one you want when you enter the U.S. If you're B1, B2, I think you said it was in your Brazilian passport, or whichever one it's in, I would use that to enter. When you get your Chilean passport, make sure all those potential employers know, because again, you've got that fantastic H-1B1.
Okay. Well, this is the last question that I have here. In case the visa is denied, how long do I have to wait in order to apply again to enter to the US?
You can reapply right away. It depends on the visa and the reason for denial. So it may be that you have to explain, oh, this was denied for this reason, and that's now been fixed. Or you can just say, I think they made a wrong decision. So for B1, B2, for example, those visas sometimes get denied because the officer doesn't believe that person is really just coming to be a tourist. So we just send them right back with better evidence that they're going to come back to their home country. I frankly just haven't had a lot of visa applications denied. So, but sometimes we try one, it doesn't work, and so we just try a different visa, and that's fine. You just say, this is the reason I didn't qualify for that, but it's not required for this visa.
Okay, cool. Well, I think there is no more questions. So, Isabel, we really appreciate your time. If one of our students is looking for an opportunity in the US, how can they contact you?
Well, my email is up, should be up on the screen on that last sheet. I'm happy to schedule consultations with folks to go over their specific situation. I like to spend some time on that, look at their resume and so on, so that I can give them a true assessment. certainly if they have a potential employer who wants to understand more about how to bring that person over, I'm happy to talk to that employer as well. So, I mean, as I said at the beginning, I feel really passionate about this and about bringing people like your students here to the U.S. So I really try to be as creative as possible with how to bring folks over. So.
Well, thank you, Isabel, for all your time, for your suggestions, for all what you shared. We have almost 1 hour and a half, so it was completely useful. I think that is very important for us. We're looking for opportunities, and I think that all this information is very important for us. So thank you so much for your time. I don't know if you been in Spain, or are you planning to come to Madrid?
Oh, I have been. Yes, I've been to Madrid.
Really?
I was recently in Barcelona. I've
Cool.
traveled a bit around. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. So,
Well, cool. You are welcome anytime
I
you want.
want to bring the Spanish over here. We need more Brazilians. We need Chileans. We definitely need Uruguayans. So that one should come too. Jose, come as well. Uh, yeah. I think we should have the U.S. visa quota system, quite frankly, based on the quality of food that the culture brings to the U.S. Um,
Yeah, of
so,
course.
yeah, so
Would be
I've been
easy.
petitioning for that. Yeah, so I mean,
Yeah.
Spanish, Latin American food, like you guys would have enormous
Yeah.
visa quotas. So that's the way it should be.
Well, let's wait for that.
Yeah. All right. Well, you guys have a good evening, and I look forward to hearing from some of you with questions.
Of course. Thank you so much. Thank you, Geek Pollard, for this time, and I'll see you in the next opportunity. See you.